So my interest in feminism mainly came from, I did a subject in Scotland at school. It's called Modern Studies, and most schools don't have it, but it's basically like history, but of the last 50 years. So you look at current events. I started doing that subject in school when I was like 14, and I think that it really engaged me with how politics affects me. And I think that as a woman, you're able to see the way that it affects you in comparison to the way that kind of politics and like kind of social culture affects men. And I think that that class really engaged me, and then because I was writing essays, it really gave me a voice. When I like graduated from school and I came to university, I didn't have that class anymore to like talk about how I felt, so I was just looking for kind of any space to like talk about the way that I feel and the things I think are important, in this case feminism. And so I just use social media because it's a public space and you can kind of talk and engage with anyone. I think definitely when I started talking about like feminism and things through social media, I was doing it just on my own account and kind of shouting into a void a bit, and there wasn't really a community I was a part of. I'd like just moved to London, but it definitely helped me kind of meet people. It helped me make my friends at university who were people who had similar kind of ideals and like talking about like the same kind of subjects. And I think that now there's definitely more of a community kind of that we've built around it, that's like my friends and other like young women in London that are creatives who like use their art and stuff to talk about kind of activism and social issues. But I don't think that there was one kind of when I started. I was definitely just kind of shouting on my own on social media. It's kind of disappointing that it's almost always on fashion. Like I get much more like engagement through like an outfit picture that I'll post than if I like go to an event and put it on my story. Or I think I use my story a lot more for social media, while I use my feed, or like I use my story more for like politics, and then I use my feed for like fashion. I definitely get way more engagement with fashion. But I try and just like use my story when I'm talking about social issues now, so that I like in the hope that people will reply in private, and it might give them like more of a space to talk about it. And I think I definitely see more engagement now using kind of private spaces to talk about it, because I think people just aren't confident enough to like, you know, reply publicly and talk publicly about social issues, which is a shame, but I'm happy to kind of like engage with people on whatever platform they feel comfortable with. It's often a kind of somewhere between the two. I feel like the people that I have like the best kind of conversations with, and like we end up maybe like I maybe end up interviewing them, or I help them with their work. Like, and the people that I have the best kind of collaborative experiences with are not complete strangers, but they're not my best friends. They're often like friends of friends, or people that go to the same university or write for the same magazines, and so we kind of know of each other, and then either me or them will kind of reach out and talk about something. So I think my closest friends I speak to in person, and complete strangers just don't have the confidence to reach out online, but definitely like it's always a friends of friends kind of thing. 100%, I think my fashion is inspired by my political views, and it's something that I try and keep really close. To be honest, like within my own personal work, I do fashion journalism at uni, and my entire kind of reasoning for wanting to do fashion journalism is because I want to do women's journalism, and I think that using like fashion can be used as the best means to connect and engage with women about wider issues. And so it's a, you know, I don't love every aspect of the fashion industry. I think it can be fickle and, you know, horribly judgmental. But I think that it is a really amazing space of like all fashion magazines for women are written by women for women, and it's become quite a toxic space, but it could be such a positive space. And so my entire kind of drive behind wanting to do fashion is about using a kind of fashion space as a means to talk about wider issues. And I feel like I kind of do that holistically in like every aspect of my life now. It definitely infers the way I dress. My t-shirt is one of the Charles Jeffrey ones that were for Loverboy, so it's got like on the back it's got like an LGBTQ, like it's got the rights of like LGBTQ people, because I think it's important. And I guess definitely try and like blend it kind of holistically through with like all aspects of my life now. Women of all form will engage, so all kind of women and non-binary people will engage, men never engage. I have really close male friends who are, you know, lovely guys, absolute feminists, and like I know we share similar beliefs, or we at least share like a similar kind of passion and drive for gender issues, but we never engage like in terms of conversations that aren't like if they're my best friends and we're talking in person. I don't really get engagement from guys on these issues. Again, I think it's a shame, but I think that when it comes to feminism and it comes to fashion, the men, I guess, sometimes feel a bit scared to engage. I don't concern myself with that with my work because I just have the mindset of trying to engage young women that aren't confident enough to talk about it. I'm like, if a man isn't confident enough to talk about it, that's his issue. He has literally every single tool, you know, society's giving him every tool to be confident in engaging. I don't need to sit here and be a man to talk to me about gender. I can sit here and have productive conversations with women. I definitely get like all sorts of people engaging with me. I think that especially because when I post things on my main feed and kind of all the interaction with it is public, I get very low engagement. But putting it on my Instagram story and spaces like that, where the engagement, someone can choose to reply to you and it be a private space, I think that helps people that are less confident. So I end up getting, you know, I might get someone who I don't know that will reply, that when I look at their, you know, their profile, they're private. Like I can't even see, you know, they've maybe got 100 followers and it's clearly all family and friends and they don't have any kind of like persona or like cool profile, but allowing these conversations to take place in private as well as public spaces, I think gives people that confidence to talk about it. 100%. And I think as well now, like Instagram's in such an interesting place when we look at things like Finstas and like second accounts and third accounts, like you really can keep your anonymity like quite a lot. And it is a shame, but it's the same thing, you know, we see young people already don't go out and go to political, you know, conventions in person, or, you know, most of my friends who talk about politics aren't the people that are going to marches and doing these things. And so I think that we're kind of further privatizing our like private space, and like this anonymity online and this private space online is kind of, I don't know, it's positive to give like young people, especially like girls that are like 16, 17. I think it's really positive to give them like the beginning of like a boost of confidence so that they feel like as they get older they can talk about these things in more public spaces. But I think that when it comes to like adult women, it can be disappointing that it's not taking place more like in person or via public accounts where, you know, it could gain more traction. So I feel like I started engaging with politics in person a couple of years after I started engaging with politics socially. So when I turned 18, I became like a paying member of the Scottish National Party in Scotland, which is the Socialist Party. I'm also a member of the Labour Party in England. And I really enjoy going and partaking in events there because I think that with fashion and politics, there's not enough crossover happening in person. There's loads of really great like zines and websites and Instagram accounts, but there's not enough kind of talks and events happening that merge the two. So I end up, when I'm going to things, I'm going to like just political events or just fashion events. And when I go to fashion events, I just try and talk to people in person about politics. And when I go to political events, I just try to talk to people in person about fashion. And I'm just trying to find people to engage with. I'd really love to be able to like host and launch these kinds of events in person, like as part of my FMP and like my wider work as an adult, as I like kind of continue through through these communities and like this industry, but I think that right now my interaction like in person is kind of, I'll go to feminist marches and I'll, go to events about kind of feminist fashion, and I'll go to like political party conferences, and there's not a lot of crossover between the two. So sometimes it doesn't feel like it's that progressive, but I think right now I'm just trying to like make those connections to find that overlap. I think in a way, yes, because online, definitely, like I'm kind of projecting myself out there into like an open space, a bit like a free-for-all, I just have everything public and I'm always talking about things and I'm trying to maintain that, and people, like my engagement comes from people who choose to reach out to me, and the vast majority of those people are people reaching out because they agree. The only other people I get will be people who maybe don't know anything and they want to learn, but I definitely don't get people who reach out to me very often that are like actively disagreeing and want to have a good conversation about it. So I think that in person, people feel more confident to like be able to disagree and it not be an argument. Like I think it's such a weird part of youth culture in this country, is that like we've kind of lost, or we've kind of gained a fear of confrontation. So like people won't reply to something and be like, I totally disagree with you, this is what I think. People hide that and conceal it, but in person you still get that kind of that discourse of like difference of opinion that like I live for. I want someone to disagree with me, because if someone disagrees, it's either someone I can educate or someone who can educate me, and I feel like somebody is always going to grow and learn from like that confrontation. And so it's disappointing it doesn't happen more online, but it definitely for me only happens in like in-person kind of interactions. I think it's a combination. I think that not enough online spaces are harnessing video. I think that like we need to kind of use more video and interactive video. Like, when you go to a talk in person, you might not contribute at all, but you just feel like you learn so much from a discussion, as opposed to kind of an interview that you've read that is like hugely kind of edited and kind of refined. You get kind of that raw opinion and that kind of discourse of a difference of opinion when you go to like a panel discussion. I think that more things need to kind of update as far as technology online. We should be watching Instagram lives of people talking about things all the time, and not just like reading super like edited kind of versions of it online. But I also think that online communities need to get better at taking the community offline. I think that there is only so much that you can learn, and only so much conversation you can have. Like online, when you're having a conversation online, you're not all there. You're presenting the kind of presented self that you have online, and your kind of social media like persona. And part of that persona, like of the perfection of Instagram, is not to talk about heavy issues and discuss things and disagree and argue. I think that we need to be in person to really shed that like expectation of perfection, in order to have conversations where you go, actually, I don't know that much about this, can you tell me more? Like, actually, I disagree with what you said, can we talk about it? And like that's where you can have these like much more kind of progressive conversations. I think I'm just much more, like, I hate the word authentic, but I think that I feel like my presentation is a lot more authentic now. I think that talking about anything you believe in, being passionate and showing people passion about anything, you need to have confidence, because you're showing it to the world and it's obviously something you're very protective of. So when I first started to talk about feminism a little bit, and kind of talk about these social issues, I definitely, if someone disagreed with me, I would be offended and I'd want to hold it close to my chest, and I wouldn't want people to kind of do that, because you feel so kind of guarded by it. But I think that once I gained that confidence to talk about it online, it just gave me the confidence to be more like myself online. So I think that definitely now the persona that I portray is more like my real life self, now that I feel confident enough to talk about things. So I think that it's less about taking new technologies and actually trying to use them to talk about politics. I don't think we're gonna like sit with VR headsets on and like talk about, you know, feminism or politics or any of these issues. But it's more about looking at what engages young people and using those to harness an interest in talking about, you know, getting people engaged with politics and feminism and social issues and whatever people care about. So if new technology is something that young people are interested in, which obviously it is, then using that as a way to engage people, be that, you know, furthering communities online, or be that, you know, hosting events that are using technologies as a way to entice people to go along to them. I think we need to have these conversations face to face in person. I don't think technology is going to be able to take away what we learn when you stand and you talk to somebody and you kind of really see that human emotion from them when they're passionate about something. But I think that we can still use technology to kind of harness an excitement and an interest and make politics and social issues feel like cool and young, like to people like in their 20s. And so I think that's why I would use it more. It is difficult. I definitely feel like in some ways that it, like, you know, Little Michaela's blown up in the extent that she has, mainly because it's a novelty and it's a cool factor. But I think that there is also something deeper there. I think that we're so used to seeing this perfected, idealized, like women, you know, the ideal woman in fashion media and in media in general. And, you know, it's why we all have these personas on Instagram. And I think that when you look at an account like this, you know, her performed self online is her only self. There is no Michaela sitting behind a screen. Like, she only exists in these public spaces online. And I think that because her persona is this kind of confident public image, and like, I think that if anything, that is slightly more positive as a role model and more engaging to young people than this kind of model on a page who is skinny and pretty and beautiful and white and young and cisgendered. But if you don't know, you're getting, instead with Little Michaela, you're getting kind of none of that, but instead you're getting something that feels much more real than an image of a woman that's real. I feel like the hyper-reality there is that because she's more engaging, and she can be engaging about, you know, the clothes that she's wearing or the kind of political issues that she's talking about, it then in turn engages young people to feel like those like kind of topics are more important, if that makes sense. There's nothing else, but I think that kind of like, it's again that confidence, when you have the confidence in the kind of self that you portray online, and you feel like that's kind of the authentic you that you're portraying, I think that then you feel more confident and you kind of engage more. And I think that that's kind of the aura and the kind of enticing element of her public persona. I mean, it's interesting. The company that run the accounts I know that they're trying to use documental spaces to tell fictitious stories. So like, we're used to seeing real life on Instagram, they're trying to use Instagram as a means for storytelling, for fictional stories. And I think that it is interesting. I think it's quite disappointing, to be honest, in some ways. I think, if anything, it feels like they set up 3 accounts not knowing what would kind of take off best. And if you look as far as followers, Michaela's by far is the account that's taken off best. They did a male, and then they did a liberal female and a conservative female. Obviously, you know, young people, social media, the liberal female took off most, but I do think it's quite disappointing to like see them go, well, that's what's taking off and that's what's successful, and we're making, you know, from my perspective, I think that they go, we're making a lot of money out of this and there's a lot of traction here, and like fashion cares and companies care, and look like how much engagement this is getting. We don't need that other side. And I think that's so sad, because I saw Bermuda's profile as so interesting, because if she was able to engage with conservatives and Little Michaela was able to engage with more liberal kind of, you know, perspectives, then it might actually allow for, you know, a fusing of those 2 accounts to then become friends. Hopefully opens doors for conservatives and liberals to have more progressive conversations, and by shutting down that side of it, I think it's again doing what I think you know, I consider myself liberal, but I think it's a kind of negative thing that a lot of liberal people do is to immediately shame anyone with conservative views and then make young conservatives feel like they have to live in the shadows and not be public and able to express their views. I think true liberalism is like if everyone can talk about the way that they feel and what they think, and we can all have progressive conversations about it. And I think that shutting down that account was just like kind of giving up on that and like cashing in on how being an it girl is going to make them like more money or get them kind of more success and fame and popularity than being conservative. But I actually thought it was a really important niche that they'd like started to tap into. I think that when we're out and about in everyday life, you know, you walk past strangers and you walk past people in the street and you don't know what their political views are, and you know, people can surprise you, and you know, you really can't stereotype the different kinds of people. Obviously, you know, we look at an art school and we can say like a liberal art school, but there are people that will go here that will be conservative that we won't know about. And I think that in, you know, the public space outdoors, it's a kind of free reign. But when it comes to online, liberals rule that grounds. You know, they dominate that space. It is run by, you know, Silicon Valley, which is just young liberals. And I think that it's young people predominantly using it, so more people are liberal and progressive. I think that it's sad because we're dominating this space, but we're not setting it up as a space that as liberals I think we should be, which is that anyone can come and engage and anyone can talk, and instead we've completely bulldozed it to a point that I don't think conservatives feel safe to talk online. I think they're just worried that they're going to get like too much backlash, and people are immediately going to assume that like if they have conservative political views that they're a horrible person. If they voted conservative in the election that they love Trump and they, you know, want to kill immigrants, or that if they voted, you know, with the Tories in the UK, that it suddenly means that they hate homeless people. And I think that we're just dealing with too many extremes, but I feel like unfortunately that extreme is being actually led by like liberal people, and just kind of being like, you know, this is a liberal space, everyone has to be nice to each other, everyone has to, you know, and that's great. I think we should set a precedent of everyone should be nice to each other on the internet, and no one should be, you know, arguing on Twitter or sending each other hate on Instagram. But by doing that, it's completely bulldozing any kind of space to have progressive conversations. I think the people I want to talk to most are like, you know, conservative young people. I want to talk to someone who's got a conservative view, and it's not to change their mind, but it's just to like, you know, I feel like I can learn something from them. I feel like they could definitely learn something from me, and I think that it's just about like opening up people's minds and like changing their perspectives, and we kind of lost that online. Is that alright? Yeah.